Today, I wanted to talk about the conflicts in Congo and really dive deep into the history of it because I know a lot of people have seen Free Congo and maybe you've even seen Congo videos in your For You page saying that there are illegal minings in Congo and there are deaths happening on a regular basis for these minerals and all that. But nobody talks about the history of Congo and really dives deep. So I wanted to do that in this video, and it's going to be a long one, but I hope you can bear with me and watch the video. Reason for the conflicts that is happening in Congo. That actually predates back to the colonial era. But to understand that history, we have to understand the history of their neighboring country, Rwanda, because Rwanda and Congo have a very bloody history between each other. It has to do with the colonial era that they both shared. Now, 1,000 years ago in Rwanda, there was a monarchy that had control of the country in the sense that there were a monarchy and there were three different types of groups that lived in that monarchy. There were the Tutsi. The Tutsi were pastoralists, so they owned livestock, animals, etc. And then we had the Hutu. The Hutu owned farmland, so they could farm and do agriculture. The third group was the Twa. The Twa were hunter-gatherers. Now you might be thinking, they must be rigid groups of ethnic groups that, they can't really mix or anything like that. Not exactly. They could actually transition. Let's say, for example, a Hutu that was a farmer could transition into becoming a Tutsi if they wanted to, if only they had livestock. So they could easily transition from being farmers to pastoralists or those who own livestock, like the Tutsi did. And the Tutsi could do the same thing, although they would prefer to stay as Tutsi because Tutsis have more power, status, and etc. But like I said, it is very fluid. You can easily become a Tutsi if you had the animals. Now this is how it was going on for hundreds of years until the colonial era came along. The trajectory of the country's history changed completely after Germany set foot in Rwanda in 1896, which was the time period in which Germany colonized Rwanda, up until the First World War's conclusion, in which Germany had to give up their colonies and Belgium came in, invaded in Rwanda and colonized Rwanda afterwards. So these two colonizer countries came in succession to one another. But how did both Germany and Belgium colonize the people of Rwanda? What methods did they use? Well, it is the same old methods that were used in other countries that were colonized, and that was to divide and conquer the people inside Rwanda. Now, how did they do this? Remember the three groups of people that I mentioned, Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa. Well, the Tutsis were given favorable positions over Hutu and Twa, not because they were pastoralists and because they owned farm animals and etc. No, it was because of how they looked. Because in general, the Tutsis at that time were slim, taller, and slightly lighter in skin tone than Hutu and Twa, the other citizens of Rwanda. And this is what made Germans and Belgians want to put them in positions of power over Hutu and Twa, simply because of how they looked. Although the Tutsis were benefiting greatly from the colonial systems that were put in place by the Belgians, the Hutu eventually revolted against being marginalized by this system and took full control from the Tutsis of the land. Now the Tutsis ran off into neighboring countries during this coup that was made by the Hutu, and the Belgians did not intervene because they wanted to step away from the colonial era because it was becoming increasingly unpopular for them to hold colonial countries. And so Rwanda eventually became independent, but it was under the rule of Hutu rather than Tutsi. Now, the Hutu were ruling Rwanda for decades until the turn of the century, or the turn of the millennia, in 1994, when the president of Rwanda, who was Hutu, his airplane got shot down, And that led to speculatory theories that it was being done by the Tutsis. And that led to a conflict between the Tutsis and the Hutu again. It was such a brutal genocide that it killed almost 1 million people. Now, the genocide that took place in 1994, that killed over 800,000 Tutsi people, led to a regime change in the country in which it was no longer the Hutu people that had control of the country anymore. In fact, it was the Tutsi people that regained control. And what happened to the Hutu people? They fled to neighboring countries like Congo. And that is where we end up now in the present moment. Now we come into how this is relevant to the conflict that is happening in Congo right now. Why you see free Congo everywhere. And that is because the deaths and the killings that are being done by these militias that you see in Congo are being funded by the Rwandan government to take control of the minerals in east of Congo, but also because they are afraid of hostile attacks from the Hutu groups in Congo that for the most part are relatively peaceful people. They are afraid that they will revolt or fight back against the Rwandan government. But here's the take about this as well. The minerals that are being smuggled from the east of Congo is being bought by Western companies, by Western countries, continuously. That is why you have the phone that you're using right now, because your country bought the cobalt that is being illegally mined from Congo and being shipped away through Rwanda into the rest of the world. And this is what is happening right now. There are other reasons for it as well, but this is the biggest reasons.